Good afternoon. I'm Trident's Marketing Communications Manager, Daniel Sloan, and we're excited to be bringing you today's Culture of Research and Education webinar, Examination of Digital Marketing and Consumer Behavior Related to Independent Insurance and Financial Services Professionals. Today's presenter will be DBA student James Shiver. The C.O.R.E webinar series is designed to provide faculty, students, and alumni an opportunity to share their research and scholarship with the Trident community. By fostering a culture of professional development and idea exchange, participants will have access to a valuable forum for lifelong learning. This university-wide effort is led by Trident's Doctoral Studies directors. Since C.O.R.E is a community of learners, we wanted to have more of a community feel during the webinar. After the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. There are two ways to ask a question. Type the question in the chat box. You can do this at any time during the webinar, or you can send us a private message. Only the presenters will be able to view these messages. You are also welcome and encouraged to ask a question yourself after the presentation. If you would like to do this, please raise your hand and you'll be called on. At that point, you can unmute your phone and ask your question. Feel free to leave your camera on or turn it off. It's up to you. If you leave your camera on, just remember that everyone can see you. This webinar will be recorded and all attendees will receive a link to this recording next week. Our host today will be Dr. Indira Guzman. She is the Doctoral Studies Director in the Glenn Jones College of Business and a Professor of IT Management. She has been a faculty member and dissertation mentor at Trident since 2006. Her research has been published in over 50 academic outlets. Welcome, Dr. Guzman. The floor is yours.
Very good. Thank you very much, Danny, for the introduction. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining today's presentation. Today, it's my privilege to introduce James Shiver in our C.O.R.E webinar. He is already part of the Trident family in many ways. Mr. Shiver manages Trident's Center for Career Planning and Workforce Strategies and is a faculty member in the Glenn Jones College of Business. In his role, he assists students and alumni with career planning and development. Mr. Shiver is a military veteran, having served 20 years in the United States Army, holding various leadership roles and senior personnel and project manager. He's also a digital entrepreneur in the insurance and financial services space, as well as volunteering with a number of community-based veteran and civic organizations. Something important to mention and remarkable is that Mr. Shiver is going to be a triple Trident graduate. A triple is an exceptional alum who has earned 3 or more degrees at Trident. Those who have achieved a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, or a bachelor's and 2 masters. In this case, Mr. Shiver is going to get the degree in a Doctor in Business Administration at Trident University. On October 14th of 2021, this year, he defended his doctoral study project for the DBA program, and his study has been fully approved by the committee. Dr. Mark Young was the doctoral study project committee chair. Dr. Christopher Linsky and Dr. Angie Cox served as the doctoral study committee members. So I want to thank again James for accepting our invitation and sharing with us his research. Welcome, James Shiver.
Thank you, Dr. Guzman, for the introduction, and thank you all the participants for your interest and attendance. My doctoral study project involves a qualitative case study focused on digital marketing and consumer behavior related to independent insurance and financial services professionals. The topic and organizational background for my study revolves around choicelifequote.com, which is an online insurance service offering life insurance and other financial products and services. Stakeholders include current customers and members of the organization's professional network. And this study examines essentially how this small business can effectively increase online market share to support both ongoing profitability and long-term sustainability. The problem statement, it is unknown what digital marketing strategies and consumer behaviors can be utilized to identify actionable recommendations for increasing online market share of choicelikequote.com. And then this obviously leads into the aligned purpose statement for the study. My conceptual background discusses concepts of digital marketing strategies and initiatives in insurance marketing, as well as consumer behavior, influencing consumers and consumer decision-making. The conceptual background and theoretical framework includes Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which identifies a hierarchy of progressive human needs, the Ingle-Blackwell-Minyard model, which establishes a decision-making framework providing insight into consumer behavior, and also the technology acceptance model, which highlights factors influencing the acceptance of evolving technology. The relevant research questions that were developed include what digital marketing strategies can be utilized to identify actionable recommendations for increasing online market share, and also what consumer behaviors can be utilized to identify actionable recommendations for increasing online market share. So we're basically looking at both digital marketing strategies as well as consumer behaviors and how they interact. The significance of the study includes the potential to increase online market share and associated business revenue for the target organization, as well as expanding prior research related to digital marketing and consumer behavior overall. In conducting industry and organizational analysis, in comparing choicelikequote.com to other similar businesses, it is a digital service. It's one of over 36,000 agents and or agencies licensed nationwide. Industry-wide, life companies account for almost 3% of GDP, so significant contributors to the economy. As for internal analysis, the trends are increasing for those online consumers, so needs were identified to increase online market share for the specific organization. In considering organizational benchmarking, external benchmarking included comparing direct and online business metrics within the industry, while internal benchmarking involved the consumer inquiry data as well as website traffic information that was tracked over a period of time. Theoretical foundation number one, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is basically a hierarchy of basic human needs as motivators in this case, which include the physiological needs, safety and security, love and belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization. And this theory directly relates to consumer motivation in researching and purchasing insurance and other financial services, products and financial services. Theoretical foundation number two, the Ingle-Blackwell-Minyard model establishes a detailed consumer decision-making framework influencing consumer behavior. And this includes information input, information processing, decision-making, and variable influences, and how this process works back and forth in the decision-making of consumers. And this model, again, directly relates to the consumer decision-making processes for researching and purchasing financial services products. And finally, theoretical foundation number three, the technology acceptance model highlights key factors related to the acceptance of evolving technology as ease of use and perceived usefulness by consumers. And this model directly relates again to those consumer influences and the willingness to engage in purchasing products and services online, specifically in the insurance and finance space. As for method and design, this was a qualitative case study. This method and design facilitate study through direct feedback from stakeholders. The resulting recommendations are intended to be directly applicable to the target organization. The population is sample. The target population involved recent website visitors and members of the organization's professional network. Judgmental sampling was used to ensure the target population requirements and that participants met those requirements. And the planned sample size was to total at least 25 participants, ideally including 20 consumer questionnaires, 5 consumer follow-up interviews, and 5 agent interviews. And we'll talk a little bit more about the actual data collection in future slides. As for ethical considerations, going through the process, the letter of intent and authorizations were obtained as required. Informed consent was incorporated into the data collection instruments, and participant confidentiality and data protection processes were developed throughout and approved by the IRB, obviously prior to any data collection there. In full disclosure, I am involved with and do have a financial interest in this business. So in mitigating ethical concerns, all efforts were made to prevent potential bias and any conflict of interest. And this was accomplished through a variety of means, but specifically bracketing, the bracketing process, the bracketing journal throughout the research process, acknowledging the potential bias and discussing this with my committee chair and other strategies going through to make sure that that there was no conflict of interest and that it was a sound study. The data collection process involved, as I said, consumer questionnaires, consumer follow-up interviews, and agent interviews. All 3 data collection instruments focused on digital marketing strategies and consumer behaviors and how they related to each other. The consumer questionnaires recruitment was facilitated by email, social media, and in person to current customers and recent website visitors from within the past 12 months. The SurveyMonkey platform was used to conduct the questionnaires, and the total participation actually ended up including 27 consumer questionnaires completed. So we exceeded the number there, and that's always good. The consumer, go back one slide, Danny. I'll go through each data collection method individually here. The consumer follow-up interviews recruitment was initiated through the previously conducted questionnaire. So the last question on the consumer questionnaire basically invited the consumer to participate in a follow-up interview. The Zoom platform was used to conduct these interviews. We did have a total of 9 consumer follow-up interviews completed. Upon completion, these recordings were saved and transcribed. Use the Otter AI application in preparing analysis. I highly recommend that. It's a great app, or one similar. There are a lot of transcription options out there, but that one worked really well in my case. And then member checking was utilized to confirm accuracy. Basically, this was done by sending the final transcribed document to the participants and getting an affirmative back that this was indeed what our conversation involved. The agent interviews, again, recruitment by email to members of the organization's professional network, all known to the researcher, known to me through different professional networks. Again, Zoom platform was used to conduct these agent interviews. The total participants included 9 agent interviews completed. And again, the recordings were saved, transcribed, used in the Otter AI app for analysis, and completed member checking as well to confirm accuracy on those. And this chart represents instrument participation totaling 36 overall participants, including 27 consumer questionnaire participants, 9 consumer follow-up interviews, and 9 agent interviews. The 9 and 9 just randomly happened, time ran out, and those were the numbers, but I exceeded my minimum participant requirements, and so we went with the numbers that I had there. So I was happy that we did exceed the minimums. It did take a couple of iterations of sending invitations out. I did a 2-week deadline initially on both the questionnaires and interview scheduling, and I had to send another message out to the group, but we ended up with the participants that we needed. So in highlighting instrument duration, consumer questionnaires averaged 11 minutes, 54 seconds. Consumer follow-up interviews averaged 20 minutes, 47 seconds, and agent interviews averaged 20 minutes and 18 seconds. Then looking at the instrument word counts on the next slide, The word counts associated with data collection totaled, it was 1,887 words for consumer questionnaires, 25,224 words for consumer follow-up interviews, and 33,653 words for agent interviews. And obviously the duration here and the word count are no guarantee of quality, but it does highlight the effort and detail that went into data collection. And it's important to show that detail that was involved in the work involved in that. So in data analysis, thematic analysis was used aligning with Braun and Clark, consisted of first familiarization with results being either read or listened to twice through the initial coding, searching themes, reviewing themes, and this was facilitated through the Deduce platform. I was not initially a fan of Deduce, but as I worked through it, I realized it really is a great tool and provides some outstanding reports on the back end. So it can be work in inputting data initially, but it definitely gives you a lot of options on the back end. And then defining the themes and reporting. Given that I incorporated triangulation, steps 1 through 4 were conducted for each data collection method to allow for triangulation. And after that, steps 5 and 6 were completed. And this flow chart really is just meant to illustrate the analysis process of the workflow involved in the actual data analysis. So you go through steps 1 through 4 with each of your data collection sources, and then that allows you to triangulate. And there were significant correlation between the different sources, and then finally define themes and reporting. So it just kind of gives you an overview of a schematic of the actual process there. So themes and codes identified revolved around digital marketing and consumer behavior. The data analysis and triangulation for these areas resulted in the identification of several themes, including digital presence, organic traffic, paid traffic, on the next slide, digital engagement, consumer influences, and consumer experience, and associated code. So in going through this, basically, you're initially identifying the codes or those keywords or however you term that, and then you're aligning those into categories of your theme. So it allows you to have your overarching themes and then specific codes that align with those themes. And these themes and codes resulted in a total of 1,184 applications to excerpts or participant quotes. And again, this was facilitated through the Deduce platform. So basically, in going through the raw data collected, you're identifying those quotes of potential value. You will begin to see trends and correlation and reoccurring codes or keywords. And as you align those and I sort of categorize those into your main themes, it takes shape. And if you'll go to the next slide, I did include just a image here of a screenshot of my Deduce, the code application. So on the left-hand side, it's the interviews both for agents and consumers, and across the top, the themes and codes, and then the number of applications within those quotes, just to sort of show how that worked. As for explanation of findings, in the digital marketing area, identified themes revolved around online insurance agents having that prominent digital presence and the ability to produce either organic website traffic or paid website traffic, while themes identified related to consumer behavior primarily involved consumers' digital engagement, consumer influences, and consumer experience. In answering research questions, which was where we started in the beginning, basically what digital marketing strategies can be utilized to identify actionable recommendations for increasing that online market share. Related themes included, again, the digital presence, the organic traffic, and paid traffic. And as for research question number 2, what consumer behaviors can be utilized to identify those actionable recommendations. Related themes included the digital engagement of consumers, consumer influences, and then consumer experience overall. Theoretical implications include in the identified themes associated with consumer behavior, to include the consumer influences of family, affordability, and trust. Those areas really align with Maslow's hierarchy of needs and explaining the overarching need for this insurance protection by consumers. In reviewing themes throughout the data analysis, essentially all areas of the study connected with those consumer decision-making processes outlined in the Ingle-Blackwell-Minyard model, and the research themes related to digital engagement, consumer influences, consumer experience, and some of those areas also align with theoretical elements of the technology acceptance model. So really a nice combination of the consumer motivations in the Maslow's hierarchy, the decision-making process with the EBM model, and then their willingness to purchase online or to do business or to research or learn online through the technology acceptance model. And as for applied implications, the implications of the study related to the target organization revolve really around providing those specific recommendations based on research findings, and hopefully increasing that online market share, profitability, and long-term sustainability. It's also believed that the study findings and recommendations are of potential value to other similar organizations and entrepreneurs, as well as hopefully the industry as a whole. In addition, the findings of the study contribute to the existing industry and academic literature related to digital marketing, consumer behavior for online insurance and financial services professionals. So a couple of different areas of applied implication there. And finally, the practical recommendations. So the objective in this research revolved around answering research questions and developing actionable recommendations for increasing the online market share. Specific recommendations include that the target organization optimize digital presence through website and social media, leverage paid life insurance leads as a source of immediate and supplemental revenue, to incorporate paid website traffic strategies, to facilitate consistent activity as well as scalability, and then developing a long-term organic traffic strategy to build organic traffic and increase the website value over time as an asset itself. And then overall focusing on the consumer experience, specifically personalization, education, and simplification in all areas of business. And I would like to go through and highlight some of the specific details related to each of these recommendations, because I really don't believe the bullet list here does justice to the findings and the specific recommendations. So as a brief overview of each with the specific marketing plan recommendations. So in optimizing digital presence, the initial recommendation for increasing online market share revolves around optimizing the digital presence through the website, social media, specifically Facebook and LinkedIn, based on research findings, YouTube, and other platforms. The organization should ensure that the website is first industry-centric, so insurance-centric, focuses and addresses on a specific niche, and includes certain specific conversion features. And these really came down to a concise banner message. What do you do? What are you asking me to do? Calls to action throughout the page and advertising, an interactive quote form where customers can be engaged, be more interactive, and then educational content. So blog articles specifically were highlighted, consumer reviews, and other elements. And in considering website design, also the consumer influences, the high focus on family, affordability, and trust, those elements should be incorporated along with extensive efforts to provide just the best customer service possible, honestly, in both content on the site and functionality of the site and business processes. It's also important, this was highlighted by consumers and agents alike, to personalize both your website, your social media profiles, in building rapport with prospective customers, and to position that agent as a real person. Even though they're doing business on the line, online, consumers want to deal with a real person. Now, next, in leveraging the paid leads, the process of creating organic or paid website traffic can initially be a challenge with competing business obligations, maybe limited resources and other factors. There's a significant learning curve there, time and effort. So in supplementing organic and paid website traffic, paid leads can facilitate that immediate activity. It can help in increasing near-term or mid-term revenue, and also digital process development, just having your team go through, they're going through the processes of the sales, making those sales and cleaning up and refining those processes and other elements of an online business. And it's recommended that the target organization purchase a predetermined number of these leads. There has to be enough to show consistency and what the true ROI is. And specifically, they should be purchased, they should be exclusive, so sold to only one agent. They should be delivered by a provider having a vested interest in the successful client acquisition or policies sold. So meaning an upline brokerage general agency or a specific strategic partner. So that was of specific importance. So in incorporating paid traffic, in considering website visitors, another common source of online traffic is paid website traffic, commonly through whether it be pay-per-click, pay-per-impression, or other advertising. This type of website traffic requires significant research, testing, but it can also be scaled significantly more effectively and efficiently than organic traffic. So it's recommended the target organization develop an ongoing strategy to implement pay-per-click advertising, specifically based on the consumers surveyed through Facebook and other insurance-centric advertising networks, maybe secondary offers through other advertising and other platforms. And this advertising should be direct traffic to specific landing pages or lead generation pages focused on niches, depending on the target market that the individual is pursuing. And in evaluating and refining the paid traffic, really this gives you an opportunity for financial resources to be shifted toward those campaigns that are identified as successful and away from campaigns that are not as successful. So developing organic traffic, the optimal source, the holy grail in online marketing is attracting those organic visitors, and it's arguably the best traffic. However, it can be difficult to develop. But given that once the constant traffic is developed, essentially there is no customer acquisition cost per customer at that point, so it's very desirable. It's recommended that the target organization develop a long-term strategy for incrementally increasing organic website traffic. The strategy would involve the consistent development of high-quality, consumer-focused content in the form of specifically blog articles, as well as acquiring backlinks from related websites with high domain authority. And in doing this, it's imperative that the content provides significant value for the consumers and exhibits high levels of expertise, authority, and trust that each formula which has been identified by Google as a key consideration in search rankings. It's also important for the organizational principle here to consider and acknowledge the considerable commitment and time requirements of this strategy. This can be very time and labor intensive, and it either takes a significant amount of time or money. Either you spend time doing it or you hire people to do it, and it is a long-term strategy. And any advice otherwise is really disingenuous, because it is a difficult task, but can be well worth the effort for someone who's willing to put in the work. And overall, focusing on consumer experience and examining successful digital marketing strategies, a common theme throughout, routinely involve the practice of continually providing that exceptional consumer experience. The research results highlighted consumer focus on insurance agent engagement being personalized, being educational, and simplified. So it's recommended that the target organization develop engagement strategies and business processes which emphasize these specific characteristics. So recommendations for research. In considering the specific research problem, the purpose, research questions, and other elements, the information provided provides insight and a comprehensive overview. However, in considering topics of digital marketing, consumer behavior, there are substantial opportunities for future research and discovery beyond this. Given that lead generation and client acquisition are foundational elements within the insurance industry, logical recommendations for future research include a replication of a similar study in other related businesses to determine if the outcomes were similar. Additionally, this study focused primarily on capturing online market share, highlighting consumer lead acquisition strategies, but did not really address subsequent business processes supporting this client acquisition. So in considering the overall business process involved in insurance distribution and service, there are also other significant opportunities for research related to insurance marketing. Specific recommendations including examining the value of automating some of those business processes, analyzing lead versus client acquisition cost. Cheaper is not always better. You know, you may have a better ROI with a higher cost, but a lower acquisition cost overall. And then evaluating lead contact strategies as well was a recommendation. So this concludes the quick overview of my research and findings. At this point, I would like to turn it back over to Dr. Guzman for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, James. Great presentation. And I want to emphasize two aspects of your research. One, the aspect of applied research. You know, this kind of research provides a specific recommendations to practice, which is very valuable in what we call now responsible research. You know, we want to reduce the gap between philosophical research and practice. So there is a lot of value there in your research in that sense. And the other important aspect is the rigor of research. You know, we want to conduct research that it's replicable. And something that you did very well in your doctoral study project is provide details of all the things that you've done as a researcher and document everything and create those tables. And, you know, and you always demanded yourself even more, like, yeah, I can do even more. I can provide more details. I can tell all the stories. So that is very commendable. And I just want to congratulate you for that. Great job. And again, thank you very much for sharing your experience with our doctoral students and with faculty. At this point, I think we are open to questions. Thank you. Thank you, James. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot for the great presentation, James. Really excited to read your DSP. And as a reminder, we got one question in via the chat box already. You can submit your questions there. Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. But first question for you, James. What would you say was your biggest challenge or challenges in conducting your research?
I would say two. One was I found a topic of interest and I had to fit that into the program requirements, if that makes sense. The second was just from a work standpoint, I think the literature review was very challenging. I have to admit, there's a lot of work goes into that. But I think really identifying your topic and then working to make sure that your topic is a feasible study, that it does meet the program requirements, and that you can successfully complete the research. I think I had several iterations. I started with a similar topic and it morphed over the course of several classes. So I think that was the biggest challenge. You know, I had some rewrites involved. It was you know, so if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. And next question, James, what's your best advice to doctoral students moving into the DSP dissertation phase of their program to set them up for success?
I would say if moving into the DSP phase, into that last year, really try to stay on track with the curriculum and the courses. Well, more so the requirements. At that point, it's not as much curriculum as it is. You have certain requirements in each module, each class. If you get behind, it can be very difficult. So I think time management, staying on track, be open to criticism and feedback from your committee chair, and other faculty members that are helping you. You know, there were lots of times when I got feedback that was a little disheartening because it created significantly more work. But when I looked at it, it made my project better. And I'm really glad that I followed all the recommendations along the way. So I would just say, be coachable. Don't get frustrated. It is all part of the process. So the feedback, the changes, the process you go through, it's all part of the process. It's part of the learning process, and it will improve the final product of your DSP. So I think that would be the recommendation there, is just don't get frustrated. Just stay focused and stay on track.
Thank you. And James, how did you come up with the questions you wanted to ask?
So with some help from some of my instructors. No, honestly, I knew that I wanted to focus this study on digital marketing, but I wasn't sure how to get to the point of recommendations. How do you identify what is working? So I really looked at sort of the two areas. And then once I started thinking of who are my stakeholders, who could I, include in the research, and what fit there, obviously the digital marketing made sense, but then how that influences consumers. So how do I word that in consumer behavior, I finally came up with. So once I had that and talked back and forth with, some of the faculty members in the course I had, Dr. Linsky, Dr. Young, and on the committee as well, Dr. Cox, really helping develop those questions based on where I was trying to go to. The objective, the end goal. You sort of have to plan backwards and think backwards into that process of how you get there. So sorry, that was the long answer there, but basically looking at where you're trying to go and what questions you need to answer to effectively provide those recommendations.
And a bit of a follow-up to that, since I know we have a few people in the audience who are very early on in the doctoral program, is when it comes to questionnaires, coming up with the right questions can be a bit of an art and involves some trial and error. Did you experience any of that when you're putting your questionnaire together?
I'm smiling because yes, I did. I started by Googling, applied research questionnaires and just trying to get a sense of what they ask, how they approached it. Were they open-ended? Were they not? How, those type things. And I sat down and I kept a running log of questions. I probably came up with a couple of hundred questions. And then I thought through those and how they, which ones align with the theoretical framework, which ones, align with Maslow's hierarchy or the decision-making model or technology acceptance, how that came together. And so I just started weeding those out and ended up coming down to about 12 questions on my questionnaire and 10 questions on each of the interviews. So, and again, I just made sure that each question had a basis in the theoretical framework, but also helped me in answering those research questions and moved me toward that purpose of providing those recommendations, if that helps. So that was a process, developing the questionnaires, and went back and forth. several times. Another thing I did that I highly recommend, and I have to give a shout out to Debbie Letourneau. If you do a professional review of your data collection instruments, you can submit those to someone in the industry who has significant experience in that field. And in this case, she had has significant experience in digital marketing and consumer research. And so I submitted my proposed questions for her to review, and she really provided some great recommendations, some things I didn't think of, ways to approach it, ways to word questions differently so they could be better understood by the participants, and more focused on my, I think originally my questions were a little general, and she helped me in really focusing those and trying to get the answer that I was hoping for. So that I definitely would recommend having a professional panel review of your instruments to help guide you there.
Okay, let's pivot a little bit to the interviews. Do you have any advice on recruiting participants who are willing to spend significant time doing interviews?
That can be a challenge. So because everyone says, yes, I'll help you, but when it comes down to scheduling, sometimes you have to chase people down. No, so what I did, I focused on, I wanted to make sure that I had populations that were appropriate. There were enough candidates there who met my requirements, who would then also be willing to help me out. And this was something that the committee actually went through and emphasized to me, to make sure that the populations as I chose my population that I wanted to pursue, that it would allow me to get those participants. So what I did, I focused on current website visitors within the past 12 months, and basically those were people who had requested information. So we had information that they could be reached back out to, or current customers. The local Chamber of Commerce had also featured the business in a social media campaign. So I knew that a number of those folks had also reviewed the website. So I did send a request out through the local chamber as well. So kind of casting that net of trying to capture people. As for the agent interviews, I actually luckily had a networking event that I went to a month or so before my interviews, where I specifically reached out to people individually and said, hey, would you be willing to help me out? And then I, compiled a list, and most of those folks did end up helping me out there. So, it's really, it took me about 6 weeks from the first consumer questionnaire all the way through the last interview, and it was constantly trying to gather more, get more people. And I think that last couple of days I had several interviews that came in, which was great. But yeah, you really have to make sure that you have the population that supports the questionnaires and interviews, and then you just have to work at it, have a good contact strategy. And if it doesn't work the first time, send it out again. I did that. I sent out one set of emails and invitations, and then I had to send out another. One thing I did as well in my invitation letter, I put a QR code on the bottom of the letter, and it was either take the questionnaire or scan here to complete the questionnaire, and that took them directly to the SurveyMonkey questionnaire, or scan here to schedule your interview. So that I made it as convenient as possible for the participants as well. I think that's important, to make it as seamless as possible for your participants.
Okay, thanks. We've got 2 more questions. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to type them in, and James or Dr. Guzman can address them after the webinar. But next question, James, great presentation. What method did you use to clean up your data?
Can you clarify clean up data? I assume that means taking raw data and preparing it for analysis. So basically, I went through the raw data. I initially highlighted different areas, those excerpts that I thought would be useful. And as I highlighted areas that I felt were impactful or important or significant, I started to notice certain keywords, those codes that popped out. So then deduce really was, like I said, initially I wasn't the biggest fan, but I am now. It's a great tool. So in taking that raw data and inputting it into the Deuce platform, and then being able to pull reports and pull different data. And interestingly, once the data was there, I had all of the quotes, the excerpts into Deuce, and I started identifying those codes and themes. And some of the reports I didn't realize I could pull certain data, and it was really interesting. And being able to look at the data from different perspectives using some of the reports into Deuce. So I would say, as for cleaning up the data, took the raw data, went through, identified those excerpts and quotes that were of significant value, put those into Deuce, and then sort of used the Deuce to curate that.
Okay, great. And last question, sticking to the same subject matter, was it difficult getting people to agree to your questionnaire and interview? How did you get them to commit to the time necessary to complete those?
It wasn't really that time consuming. Most of the questionnaires were pretty quick, and the survey, I'm sure there are a number of platforms out there, but I used the SurveyMonkey platform, so it was mobile friendly or on the computer. Someone could literally go, scan the QR code, go on their phone, and complete the questionnaire there. With the interviews, I sent a couple, and you have to stick to your plan that you present to the IRB. So you can't deviate from the plan that you present and that is approved. So what I did, I had my invitation letters, made it a one-pager, and I, like I said, sent those out a couple of times. One other thing that I did, I asked initially about, hey, can I pay people to do my participants? And I was told, no, that you shouldn't do that. And I said, well, what about a charitable donation? So what I actually did is I donated, and I put this in the invitation letter, that I would donate a certain amount to a veterans charity for each participant. It was a nominal amount, small amount, but I think that may have helped in just some of the right participants, if that makes sense, people who had really had the best interest of the study and wanted to do something good for me and support a good cause at the same time. So I'm sure that was helpful as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, James, for all the insight and great presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions on all the great questions this evening. And again, Dr. Guzman, thank you again for hosting tonight's presentation. Do you have any closing thoughts or comments?
No, I would like to thank everyone for attending today's session. I also want to thank again the committee who worked with James. I see that some of you are here, and I would like to thank again for working with James and being part of the program and promoting the rigor that we do. James, again, thank you so much for all your hard work and enthusiasm and again rigor, and for sharing with everyone. I also want to just share the words that I got from you that I think are important for everybody is be coachable. I like it, that your quotes, the emphasis on alignment, right? We talk about the alignment with theory and questions and alignment between the different parts of the study. Networking is very good, that, and of course you use the strategy in doing your research. So again, thank you very much for your hard work and for sharing. And thank you, Danny, for your work preparing this C.O.R.E webinar. And so I would like to thank everyone and wish everyone a great rest of your evening and happy Thanksgiving, even though it's early. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Our next core webinars will be in January. I'll be sending out information on those soon. Thanks a lot, everyone.